personality is joining us, the esteemed panel is joining us. Before we get started, I'll just request Neeraj to share some opening remarks with us based on the learnings from the expert panel, and we'll take it from there.
All right. Good afternoon to all. Hope you can hear me well. Thanks, Ed. So basically, if somebody can click on further to the next page, what we did was, once the expert group was convened, we got a right set of stakeholders together to debate on this issue. And you can see some of the, if some, you can click, oh yeah, okay, you can see them on the screen. So basically what you see is large technology companies which are shaping the world of AI. You see big employers, you see some philanthropic foundations, some universities, some civic society companies, and all of them have a different vantage point in this important topic, which is human advancement and flourishing in this area of AI. So what we then did was multiple consultation and discussions over the last 6 weeks. It's been a lot of work which has happened. I think while everybody came from a different vantage point, what quickly emerged is there was a common consensus. And that was very interesting. The common consensus was that, you know, if you look at human flourishing in the AI age, it cannot be left to fate. You know, it is something which has to be designed. It cannot be assumed. And that's the core context which I want to talk about as I roll through the next pages. You know this in some, what I think all of us know this in some form or shape, but this gives us more body. So if we can roll on further. This chart, if you look at it for a second, what is happening is AI is compounding non-linearly. We all know about Moore's law. We've heard of it in some form or shape, right? The technology or capability doubles every 18 months. If I was to draw a crude parallel, I think it's doubling every 3 months. And if you take that in the context of 18 months, a doubling every 3 months means in 18 months, you're about 50x or more. And for a human mind to comprehend that pace of change is almost unthinkable, right? So that's what is happening. So the capability is growing a lot slower than how technology is ramping up. Now, code writes code, AI models write models, you know, et cetera, et cetera. You get the drift of where I'm going with this. And that divide is really, really scary in some sense, right? If not managed in a proper fashion. So that's what we're talking about in this context here. And that's why deliberately building transition infrastructure, which we're going to talk about, is super critical. Now let's look at it in the context on the next page, in the context of people. And we've taken two axes: humans with agency, high agency and low agency, and humans where you have an augmentation risk or a replacement risk. Okay, you can take all the jobs of today and they will lie in one of these 4 quadrants. And depending on whichever quadrant you lie, or irrespective rather I should say, you have a task to do and you cannot stay still. The second thing is humans with high agency could actually benefit from this transition, and humans with lower agency would actually get negatively impacted with this transition. So that's the other part which is super critical. So and again, back to my point, transition pathways, and there are different things to be done for different set of people, but it needs to be very, very carefully managed in this backdrop as well. Okay, if we take a slightly longer time view of this, there is 2 things I want to highlight. What is called the Turing trap. Now, Turing trap, the crude way to think about it is when Google Maps came about, right? I don't know if you remember the world of TomTom, or actually the world of atlases before that, when we used to travel with maps, like physical maps, if some of you have commuted using physical maps. Then we had somewhat okay technology, and then Google Maps came along. What Google Maps kind of did is people who had, you know, depending on your directional sense, if you had average to low directional sense, you actually completely abdicated to technology, right? Even if you had good directional sense, you likely basically started trusting technology more. AI is that experience many, many times over. It is so seamless. It can suddenly make you feel like you're doing many things very well, but the human capability is not going to keep pace with that. So that's what we call the Turing trap. When you're basically, the dependence on AI increases, but the capability is not increasing. And that in long term has huge implications on humanity. The right hand side is what I call unequal gains. We've talked about the fact that people with agency, but if you have skill, if you have capital, if you have access to high agency skills, it can happen for corporates, where corporates having that will do better than the others. It can equally happen for individuals within corporates or individuals in general. So that's the other long-term risk that you have with what is going on all around us. And the technology benefits us so much. I see that in all my enterprise companies, clients which we serve, that there is no reason to hold back and to be I'm not saying they're not being thoughtful, but there is no reason to hold back and not gain from the advantages, right? You cannot go to a company, a bank, a technology company, a telco, or whatever. You take any example and saying, hey, be thoughtful. They say, look, all my competitors are doing it. I need to be better than them and faster than them. So that's the world we're living. That's the world we're living in. Yeah. The other thing I want to highlight is a bit of a divide between global north and global south, if I can use that word for a second. I know these are somewhat stereotype words, and there is oftentimes people may have strong views or negative views. We put China out of this. So global north is more the higher income countries. Global south will be the others. India is part of the global south. What you'll notice is that a lot more of the frameworks and scaffolding is being built in the global north. And the global south is building what I call somewhat of a survival architecture. And even there, a lot of pilots are happening, but nothing is happening which is scaling. So there's been a lot of good attempts, as often the case is. The pace of change is so fast. There are multiple good attempts, but none which is doing this at scale in a bolder way. So that's one other thing I want to leave you with. If you go further, then the intent here is to say, can we create a neutral institutional framework which worries about AI transition infrastructure at scale and become an eminent institution globally with a global south mindset, but involving all parts of it, all parts of the world. And this is not a frontier AI model creating company. This is not a degree granting or any of those bodies. But this is to say, how do we focus on this unique challenge that we have in front of us? The intent is it will be anchored in India, but it will involve people from all across the world. US, because a lot of the foundational work is happening there. Europe, because there's a lot of focus on the regulation there. Africa, there's a lot of LMIC countries there. And they are also hugely impacted by this as well. So that's the backdrop of what we are saying here in this context. And the reason you need to do this with a global south mindset is the issues are also very different. For example, affordability issues are very different. Public systems play a very important role. Languages, often many languages are there. The mode is different. Voice often is, you take India, more than 80% of internet users are voice first, not text first. Huge implications for how we design some of our systems, right? I can go on and on with the list, but this is so hence you need to think very differently in this context of how we go after this. Just to, what is the intent of this Institute for Human Flourishing? That I wanted to just give you some themes which is needed for this. So we're saying there are 5 mutually reinforcing themes which are part of this. One is you need a data aggregation insights, which is the public good. You need a single source of truth which people can go to, say what jobs are getting impacted, what are the jobs of tomorrow, real data on adoption which everybody can go and trust and be a single source. That's a very important part, because I think there are a lot of, and that's an important part we'll pick up. There are lots of, can oftentimes be, call it motivated, call it with an agenda issues out there, and we need something which is totally neutral. So that's very critical. We need to evolve, and I think there is no clarity on this, a responsible transition framework. I talked about a transition framework. In this era of huge change, unequal gains, people with agency, people without agency, the Turing trap, what is a responsible transition framework? That needs a lot of work. So that's another thing. And then use cases, localization and scale. What works in one part of the world may be very different in global north versus global south. So how do you localize and scale them? That's super critical. As well as skilling. Educational institutions, just because the technology is taking place so fast, skilling, governance, educational institutions, they're not evolving that fast at all. They're used to a cycle time which is multi-year. They're not used to this 3-month cycle time at all. It's not their fault. That's how they were designed, right? So how do you keep pace with that? And also one more important thing, which is why the orchestration is important. You do not want to reinvent the wheel every time. So if something good is happening in some part of the world, we want to build off it, because we have no time to lose, using that common phrase. Yeah, genuinely on this as well, as much as for climate, on this topic. So that's what I wanted to call out. And hence, what are the immediate next steps? And then I will get into a panel discussion with a lot of very wise people here and with some wonderful perspectives, and hopefully we'll have some time for asking you guys to ask some questions as well. So the idea is to get this institute off the ground quickly and create a governance framework, secure some initial founding partners, and it will be all kind of stakeholders. Again, for this to be successful, this needs all kind of stakeholders, a similar group that we convened to get this going, but at much larger scale, and as well as define the transition framework and the data coalition. So this was somewhat fast, but hopefully this gives you a bit of a flavor of something you may be experiencing in different forms or shapes, but this is something which is going to profoundly impact all our lives, irrespective of what job you're doing, which part of the world you're living in, which industry you're part of, etc., etc. So with that, I wanted to get into the next mode. There is one other thing we wanted to do, which is to all this that I shared and a little more is there in a formal report, which will be available publicly, but we have a physical copy today. In the world of AI, we printed a few copies. So if we could have a formal launch of the report with all of you holding a copy, which Pratish is handing out, and then we can just get a picture clicked, and then we get into the discussion. So thank you for listening for so far.
Can we take a picture?
We take a picture with all of us. Should we just stand here, or do you want us to stand like this? Is good? Okay. Solid. Okay, just come closer. Come closer. Yeah, that's maybe better. Thank you. Awesome.
Thank you, Neeraj, for the insightful opening. We have a pretty impressive panel with us today. Neeraj, of course, you heard, he's not just a senior partner at BCG, but he's also founded Plakshar University. Neeraj will be moderating our session today. Charlotte heads global relations and external sales for ServiceNow and has been driving a lot of initiatives on behalf of ServiceNow. Aparna leads the Center for Innovation and Delivery for Microsoft. Pleasure to have you, Aparna, here. Manu almost started a data revolution in India. Like, he has been championing the agenda of India's local context, local data for a while now, and he's been covered by Times. He has been standing for India's local languages, local data for a long while now. Pavani, thank you for joining us today. She has been leading a lot of education skilling programs for Gates Foundation. And finally, Georgia, what you're doing with UNICEF, Generation United is inspirational. You are already working on the human flourishing agenda, so it's fantastic to have you on the panel here. Neeraj, over to you.
Thank you, Sid, and thank you for joining. I think I'm very keen to hear from all the esteemed people on the panel because you bring different vantage points, and you've been playing with this for a bit. It's only been so much time, but you've been, and some of you have been early adopters on this thinking. So my first question, and I'm just going to throw out a few questions and probably take a few of you to respond to that. The first one which was on my mind was, if any of you had an idea on what could a meaningful transition look like for a low-income country or an informal labor context, which often is also true in this part of the world. A lot of informal labor as well. Would any of you be willing to get going with answering that? You want to start, Georgie? Okay.
Great. No, thank you. And it's great to be part of this panel. Thank you. It was actually also great to be part of this expert group and thinking through some of these questions together. I think the points that I'd like to raise is also coming from Generation Unlimited, where our focus is really looking at how we support youth to transition to livelihood. And we do this, of course, here I'm representing India, but we do this across Africa, South America, and Asia. Equity is hugely important. So how do we ensure that this transition doesn't only affect some, but affect all? So I think what's really, really important is looking at how, for example, AI, which is disrupting the way the future of work, how can we ensure that everybody's skilled and have the right means to be able to be part of this, be it in tier 1, tier 2 city, be it in rural areas. We talked about the different languages, right? We know that AI still is not necessarily supporting all the different languages that are spoken or spoken in India, and this could be creating a gap for some that are unable then to be part of this transition in a equitable way. So for me, really, the focus is when we think about the future, when we think about the future generation, those who are going to be moving towards the world of work, particularly because that's a focus group that we focus on, which is young people. How do we ensure they are equipped in an equitable way to be able to gain from the revolution of AI in the future of work in the same way as everyone else is in different different contexts. So equity is what I'd like to put on the agenda.
But I want to go, and Manu, I'm going to come to you as well on this after that. Yeah. Is there a button you need to press?
Yeah, so just to build on that, I think that's also how, at Microsoft we are taking a look at, holistically how do we cover, everybody from students to government officials to all the way, of course, to industry. And just to give some stats, I think we are investing as we speak in upskilling about 20 million people by 2030. That's the goal, and we are already making some good headway. So even by July of last year, I think we have reached about 5.6 million, and that includes, let's say, 45% women, about 67, actually 70% from tier 2, tier 3 cities. I mean, your point on inclusion. So there's a lot of focus on like how do we not leave anyone behind. And I think we'll just continue to double down and think about it more as a 2-3 year, like multi-year strategy, and not like, okay, you do one pilot or one training and you get done with it. But Neeraj, to your point, I think one of the food for thought is still on like how do you get all the way to the labor community as well. And I think there's definitely work to do there, because I think as some of you, may have heard Satya talk about this more recently, even at Davos, about like AI diffusion at population scale. And he actually used this the first time in context of India and the population that we have here, but it just is resonating like across the world, and so there's more to do is really my
No, Aparna, thank you. But there's also one more theme which we'll pick up later. But Manu, you want to come on this? The diffusion may not be same as inclusion. Yeah, I mean, that's a very important point as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an honor to be here. Thank you for having me. In fact, one of the things that I really like the way Satya described this problem is you would know AI is working for society when you see growth, right? Like he's been very clear, and I think I really like that framework. I think today, in complete honesty, we suffer from worst of both the worlds, which is neither are AI models performing at the same level as they do in the global north, as they do with us in India. And at the same time, AI is actively hurting a lot of traditional occupations that young people in India do, right? So neither is and I think we have to like literally flip both of those things. So the question one is, how do I make sure AI is as economically productive for the average person in India as it is in the US, let's say? And even there's a lot of work to do in the US as well, because you see with things like Claude Code and you see these automated solutions coming in, they're incredible, but they're in one space. And I think they're in software engineering because that's the space software engineers know the best, right? And I think we now need to look at, if you look at the kind of things that OpenAI has done with GDP eval, where we're looking at how can AI models help automate workflows so that they make me more productive in the work that I do. We are expanding on that work by doing something similar in India, looking at 100 occupations and thinking deeply about how does AI make the life of the ASHA worker better, right? How does AI make the life of the Anganwadi worker better? And these are communities who are paid by the person that they help, right? So if I can help them help 20 people in an hour instead of 5 people, I can potentially increase their wages that much. And how do I make them more productive in the work they do using AI? And I think that to me is the power of this technology. The first thing, just on diffusion, is how do we make sure that not only is that ASHA worker, do they have access to Copilot or GPT or Claude, are they actually able to use that product where they are to make make themselves more productive? So that's step one, economic productivity. And then the second thing is, what does a just transition look like, right? Like what does for communities who are getting displaced, and we do have very scary pollings like that you have in the book and that we've all read. What does a just transition look like? At Karya, we think deeply about what are economic opportunities AI will enable. And obviously, I think the step one is just look, it is going to create opportunities for people to build data sets in their own languages, right? So we've been able to engage with 140,000 people across every single state in the country. And we've been able to engage with these people to do 65 million plus digital tasks on our platform. They've built foundational data sets for 70 plus Indian languages. And there's more to do, right? But what we have figured out is not going to be enough, right? Of course, like to just to counter the effects we will see. So we need to think deeply about what are new economic opportunities AI will create. I actually think what game is doing, right? I know Navi's not here, right? But I think one of the things that AI does is it reduces I don't know I'm quoting Satya so much, but it reduces the floor and increases the ceiling, right? So does it make it easy for me to become an entrepreneur? Does it accelerate learning pathways that didn't exist for me earlier? But at the same time, just because, see, that all has to do with evaluations, right? I can't just build a product or a chatbot that anyone can use for anything and assume that it's gonna it's just gonna help people upskill themselves, right? Like it's not automatic. So we need to look at for every 100 people I connect to a skilling program, how many what is the income increase we see 6 months in, 1 year in? And I think it has to be that rigorous for us to make sure that AI is a force of good for our community. So better diffusion, thinking about economic productivity, not just for software engineers, but for all communities across the country, and then thinking about what economic opportunities, and I say economic opportunities, not jobs, because jobs comes after, but just starting with economic opportunities. What economic opportunities can AI create? And then hopefully jobs, that would be the dream, but yeah.
Perfect, Manu. Charlotte?
Yes, so just to pick up on that, I think one of the things for me that's most important is actually to move the conversation away from AI being a technology. We always talk about AI and technology. We need to start thinking, to your point, about AI actually being a force for good from a socioeconomic perspective, and how do we build true pathways to socioeconomic prosperity. It's only at that point when people outside of places like the AI Summit can really start to imagine what a world with AI can be, when you make it relevant to every single person. The moment, most people think AI is relevant to a software engineer or to a tech company. And I'd like to give a really good example of that. We've actually got some learnings that we can't forget about. About 25 years ago, this amazing thing called the internet suddenly started to take off. And it was really only about 25 years ago. And at that point, there were similar conversations, a lot sort of shorter in length because of the speed that we're seeing AI grow. But people were like, oh, what am I going to do with it? How is this going to affect me? And the financial services sector actually did a really clever thing. They changed the conversation away from it being about the technology and actually how the internet could enable you to do better banking. How they could enable you personally to see a difference. They embarked on a training program, very human-centric training program, where you could actually contact anybody by phone and ask them about your online banking. They created trust through credibility. They created entire new product sets through internet banking. And within 2 years, internet banking actually became the norm. It wasn't that the internet technology became the norm, it was that the behaviors became the norm. And it became part of your socio-economic day-to-day life. And so to go to your point, I think that's one of the crucial things that we need to be thinking about, that switch from AI being a technology conversation to actually AI being part of your entire socio-economic opportunity.
Interesting, Charlotte. Varun, do you want to add to this or? Okay, fine. So I want to move to the next question. This is particular to the large tech companies, and so maybe getting to you, Aparna and Charlotte. As AI adoption increases, what specifically do you think are the responsibility large tech players have in this world of tomorrow?
A lot. I think that's where I would begin. And I think it can't be an afterthought. It has to be integral to how we build, what we build, what are the guardrails, if there is anything errant. So I think it's almost like, I mean, we talk in an agile or iterative loop of work. So this just has to be as integral as like a pull request and code check-in and or somebody reviewing your code. So I think that's how integral it has to be. Number one. Number two, having said that, there's, and this is here, I'm going to say, more as of my personal view, that which also means that all the organizations actually need to come together. It's not going to be enough for one organization or one industry to think about it in isolation, right? Because that won't be good enough. It's almost actually like the conversation we are having right now, right? That without, all the relevant ecosystem coming together to figure this out, I don't think we'll be successful at scale. So while yes, the big technology companies or the big FSI companies maybe tomorrow, if they become the first adopters of AI, so whoever embraces it has to be like coming to the table to define what the guardrails around responsible AI looks like. But to your point, yes, I mean, a lot of the technology companies need to lead the way and even make sure that they are talking about like some learnings, even from AI as we knew in the past. Right? I mean, generative AI obviously has taken it to the next level. I mean, and I remember certain instances where we have rolled back our product capability because, we found like there was a bias in the system and so on. So that, I think in the generative AI world, that kind of guardrail almost gets like reimagined to a very different threshold. So it's like building it, co-creating it, and making sure that it's a continuous motion and not like, we say, okay, I've released one responsible AI playbook and we are good to go.
Sorry, Charlotte, I'll come to you, but I should have said this earlier, Aparna. This Dario's essay, long form essay earlier this year on this adolescence of technology, I don't know if you had a chance to read it, but did that get discussed in your organization? Just curious.
I mean, there's a lot that gets discussed, but as one of the inputs, yes.
Okay.
And I think we'll have Brad Smith coming later this week, so I think we'll hear a lot more because, I mean, he and his team are probably like breathing and thinking this every day and being the conscience for the rest of the organization for us.
No, I didn't mean to put you on spot, but I was just saying that kind of thematic as opposed to that specific. Okay, Charlotte, and then we'll go to Georgia. Wants to say something else on this.
So I think we've touched on it. We've each individually touched on something that I think is critical for large organizations, not just technology organizations, by the way, any large corporate organization. And that's equity. I think that we have to, when we're doing our product development, when we're building our strategy, we have to remember that there is a world outside the global north. There are still 2.1 billion people in the world that are offline. So we talk about, opportunity for all. We talk about this great democratizer that is technology. And yet 2.1 billion people are offline. 685 million here in India alone. 1.2 billion women offline. And 61% of those are in the global south. So I think if we really want to be able to harness the power of AI as a corporate organization, those 2.1 billion people are our customers. We cannot leave them behind. Because if we do, ultimately, that's going to stifle innovation, stifle opportunity, but also stifle the true power that actually AI has to create opportunity, both for corporates, for individuals, for governments, and for all. And we've got to start remembering those 2.1 billion people. We can't just keep remembering the people that are in the global north and our key markets.
Gotcha.
Yeah, no, thank you. I just wanted to go back to your point around how do we ensure the safeguards are in place, and I really like to hear how the feedback loop goes back and forth that reshapes and reimagine what the safeguards are. I think when you're looking also at who do the company, the developers, the businesses, when you're thinking about who to engage when discussing these issues, it's really important also to ensure that the users are engaged, right? And young people being a very large proportion of this user, they have a lot to say. For example, we just launched this week in relation to the AI summit. What we call it is a youth statement, where 54,000 young people globally have been asked around AI, what are the risks, the opportunities, and was further verified with young people in India, what resonates. So there are some very interesting insights with young people that touch around the issue of equity, the issue of bias, the issues of opportunities. So how do we bring them into the journey as we go back and forth with how we're shaping what AI looks like, the technology looks like. It's, I think, for us at least, very, very important. And I know there's some really good practices around this, so it's great to hear also about this.
Pavni, I'm going to come to you, either on this topic or maybe the next one, which was what would be a great starting point for an institution like this, and and maybe why, or if you want to take that on, or unless you want, yeah. Just bring it closer, yeah.
That's probably better. Better. So just a quick comment on this last topic about responsibility of employers. So I say this not as representative of the philanthropy that I'm part of, but just in general, I think that we're all part of organizations where I think we owe it to each other to understand the skills that we're bringing to the table and what value creation really looks like as we go through this transition. And I think large employers have a big responsibility to help forecast that and make that more transparent, and really think about their current workforce and their prospective workforce in a more transparent way. And I know that the transition is happening so quickly, to your point, and this report's point, but I think if we can maintain some kind of tether to what creates value for that organization, I think it'll give a signal to other institutions, like educational institutions, to young people, to educators, on what really matters as we make this transition. So that would just be one quick point. As far as this multi-stakeholder Institute for Human Flourishing, I am really excited about it. I do think that bringing together the diverse perspectives is incredibly important, but also I think how to get it started and get it running well is, I do think, finding those really hyper-local examples of success, and I love that point that was made about scaling those, because we don't have time to be academic or esoteric about what would work everywhere for everyone, but finding those opportunities. And one of the projects that the Gates Foundation is involved in the U.S. is a multi-funder collaborative called Humanity AI, which is a $500 million effort in the United States across the next 5 years to really think about building AI for the people, for the benefit of the people. And it's a multi-funder collaborative that is trying to do just that, not trying to boil the ocean on figuring out what is going to work everywhere, but really having those proof points that can be used and scaled, kind of across the United States. So that's just a couple thoughts on how to get started with success.
No, excellent. This is a question I have for everybody on this institute. So maybe we can go in this order itself, if that's okay. I mean, Manu, you want to come next on that?
On what would it take for the institute to be successful? Like,
what's the right starting point for an institute like this, and what will it take to be successful? Yeah.
Look, I think founding teams, everything, right? As I think we already have such an incredible group of people who have come together with, like has been said before, such different but important perspectives to have in the conversation. I think number two for me is founding team. Speed is so critical. Right? I think AI is moving really fast. I sometimes I read research papers for fun, but there was just a research paper out that was in Long RCT on a healthcare AI intervention. They started the work a year ago, and it was about GPT-4. And it was done so well, but it was just so not useful, because GPT-4 was dead. Like, you're just not there. You know what I mean? You can't literally, like, even if the research paper said use this model, the model is not there in the model picker anymore, right? So I think we need really fast speeds on getting there, because these technologies are coming very, very fast at us. And I think when you have a system where people are operating at different speeds, because they're that's just the incentives, the different speed. You often have low-income communities or vulnerable communities who have the short end of that stick, right? Because they're left scrambling. And I think that's something that the institute, there's a huge gap that the institute can fill in. So I think founding team, speed, right partners, goal setting. I'm just telling you how I try to run an organization. No, you know what I mean? Like I think having very strict goals and very ambitious goals on what needs to happen. I think Ravi, who's not here, but our Lord and Savior, he's incredible. He's done this before on really complex issues. I think game success and all the work that Ravi has done, to me, is example that you could take really audacious problems, bring everyone together, and actually make a dent at them, right? Like whether it's like games goals of creating millions of entrepreneurs across the country. I think doing something similar here with the goals that we have in like a 6-month, 3-month time period instead of a 1-year time period would be very exciting.
No, I like this idea of founding partner speed, quarterly goals rather than yearly goals. And, exactly. And Ravi has been fantastic. He's unfortunately not here because he's unwell today. He would have loved to be here. Aparna, could I?
Yeah. So maybe I'll take a step back in terms of just experience from the past. And I think some of us already spoke about it. But if I even look at like some of our effort, I think we have tried to think about it at 3 levels. Let's say, AI just in terms of college or in education space. And did that actually translate into making students more employable? Did organizations actually hire them as kind of a metric? The second, if you look at workforce transformation, which is like something we are undergoing ourselves, or we also equip our customers and partners to do that. So again, like what's the metric of success and how did we make the mark there? The third framework, which is more about, how do you enable innovation and entrepreneurship? Specifically last year, I inaugurated this Unnati Accelerator in IIT Delhi, and this was one of the initiatives to actually encourage students to focus on ideas in agriculture, in healthcare, and a lot of tier 2, tier 3 cities. So it was not just like the startup ideas, but a lot of these students who actually came and, and they are right now in the incubator. So my point really is that, so define, let's say a work stream, upfront define what success looks like, and then being able to break it down and course correct. I mean, if something is not working, better to pause and like try something different. I think I'm just sharing that framework because then the rest of it is actually everything that Manu said, right? That all of this on steroids almost in today's world because we need to move so fast. Right, so just doing this to say, yeah, what maybe was okay to like 1-year metric becomes a 1-quarter metric now for ourselves. But I think it's still the framework, and I think there is a lot of collective knowledge and experience here to leverage and build upon.
So I'll come to Charlotte and Georgia, but after this we'll take a few audience questions. So if you do have questions, do think that in your mind, yeah?
So difficult coming after the three of you who's just made such great points. I just want to come back to something that Manu said around goals and having shared common goals. I think also to go with that, you need a shared common lexicon. We find so many of the times, especially when we're working across stakeholders and across differing stakeholder groups, that one thing means something very different to another person. And somebody actually said to me not long ago, if you ask 10 people in this room to define AI, they'll all have a slightly different answer. So I think in doing this, as well as those really stringent goals, it's actually what is the common language that we're going to talk around those goals and around those metrics to make sure that we're actually all going and we're all thinking the same thing.
Like that idea of common vocabulary, yeah?
I would say 3 things. One is, I think echoing to what was said, is really important to have diverse point of views in the room, not just bringing in those that are like-minded, but really have diverse point of view to constructively build something that makes sense for everyone, making adding to the richness of the conversation. So the diversity of the group, I think it's really important. I also echo what was said around the wealth of knowledge that we already have. We have collectively a lot of knowledge across the different domains. You've talked about the skilling. We also, reached over 5 million youth in skilling. This is happening across industries. And how do we take those? You talked about, going to scale. how do we take what is the most the solutions that we think that could work across borders, south to south, how do we take them to scale quickly to see what works, what doesn't work, how do we need to pivot them in so the speed, the diversity, and taking things to scale. And the last one for me would be open source. It's really important, and open source I think was mentioned here a few times. So how do we make sure that the knowledge that we have that we feel is right, or the pilots that we have that we can be scaled, can be open source, or can benefit more and more people in a quicker and greater way? So those for me will be the 4 main points.
Thank you, Georgia. That's very helpful, and I love the open source point as well. So I have more questions, but I wanted to give a chance to the audience. Okay, there's many hands. That's great. Sure. My request would be on the question as the mic comes to you, keep it brief. Don't, if it's long, then I'll have to cut it off so that we can and we will take a few questions from the audience together, and then I'll direct them rather than just do one by one. So if you can start with.
Yes, that's right. My name is Umesh Prasad Singh, and I have students who come for, artificial intelligence students are there, whom I teach. I was going through the research paper on this very particular topic, what you just now mentioned about humanity, artificial intelligence, and you use the word esoteric. This is a very important term when we speak in terms of esoteric, and when we speak in terms of flourishing in the age of AI. It is a matter of collaboration and holistic approach, which takes into the consideration of the fact of total advancement of learning, which Francis Bacon mentioned in the year 16th century as a student of English literature. I feel that this particular aspect of humanity, artificial intelligence, leads to collaboration and holistic approach for the growth and development, internal, external, is extrinsic and intrinsic at the same time. That is the goal, significant to be mentioned.
So, sir, I'm taking that as a comment, yeah? Okay, and not a question. So I would focus on questions then comments if they have, yeah.
Sir, actually very good discussion, and the institution idea is also very good. The basic thing is we need to ensure that no one is left behind. So in terms of, I think people like Elon Musk are saying there will be abundance, and AI is going to solve poverty. So that's what they're saying. Like there will be highly efficient production of everything, agriculture, whatever you take, whatever is required for human sustenance and living. So that is one part. Second is, as Madam told, it should be open source. No one should have control, and that it should be accessible to everybody. So if such institutions ensure these two aspects, I think it's going to be a good.
Okay. Another comment. Let's get a few. Okay.
Okay. So question is something like.
Just keep the mic closer, please.
Okay. Now, when you are saying, for example, starting from what Manu said, again this profitability part from the industry that comes again. Now, first question is something. For example, that AI has been taken for all, and all knows AI, and everything has been implemented. Now AI is going to replace what humans are doing. Now what in future humans are going to do it? How that economic cycle will work?
So there's a question on transition framework and what that should look like. Okay, let's take a couple of questions this side as well. Yeah. Yeah.
I am Pradeep Kumar Gupta, Independent Director with IICA, also a consultant with MSME. Now one question, simple question. Sir has asked one question regarding how we can go into the untouched society, that is the unprivileged resources, the human power. One question which we are trying to address through AI is that sustainability is one of the part. Now 1.5 degree centigrade difference for our sustainability, for how we can translate that sentence into our AI governance, into our human resource development.
Okay.
Say every organization.
Sure. Can I build on? So what he's saying is that the 1.5 degree centigrade anchored the whole world around. Is there an equivalent clarion cry that can be for AI? I think there's a gentleman there as well, said, who wants to ask a question. Yeah. Okay, we'll come to you. Okay, so maybe the drift is we're getting more comments in the flavor, so that's okay too. Okay.
In this AI transition, how do we equip our young people in terms of what skills they need to be prepared about? What is that they need to be doing? Because in the speed of transition, are we giving them guidance about what the world gonna look like? Are we helping them or are we catching hold of them at a young age and telling them this is how it's going to look like? I think that's one. How do you people see that transition is going to be with respect to young people in the center?
Okay, we may come and take that up. Okay, let me load a couple more, okay?
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Flourishing Shamana from Mozambique. It's an honor to be part of this discussion. We are currently drafting our own national AI strategy, and some of the elements that we're getting from the young people's fear related to unemployment, related to AI development, mainly in our part of the world. And the other challenge that we're having is how can we answer to this concern, showing that there will be opportunities, and also to link our strategy with the socio-economic development. I like your approach, Charlotte, on the socio-economic development. We would like to learn from your experience, if you can elaborate a little bit more on how countries in the South, like ours, can link AI with socio-economic development and provide opportunities and hope for the young people in this field. Thank you.
Okay, perhaps, yeah, we don't take any more questions. I would give I'm looking at the clock, maybe a panelist to, I think the broader theme, if I were to structure it, there is broader concurrence around a need for an institution of this kind. There's a lot of questions on what does responsible transition look like? What does it mean for the youth of tomorrow? That's the broader theme I'm picking up in these questions, whether you're from Africa or from India. That's a common thematic. I'm not going to take more questions, sir, because I'm looking at the clock is saying 3 minutes, and I do want to give a. No, sure. I mean, we can take the more doomsday view as well. I mean, I get it. So, would anybody? I don't know. This is exactly the kind of, in some sense, the remit of what the institution should try and answer. I don't know if there are easy answers that I can. If anybody wants to in the panel attempt an answer, I'm happy to pass the mic to you.
On the doomsday?
Sorry?
On the doomsday question?
No. Ignore the doomsday question. I mean, we can go sidetrack because it's an important question, but not the focus of today's panel, if I may.
So maybe a quick one, basis some of the thematics is that at least one framework to think, way to think about it. So first, if we take a step back, the true success of AI will be when it augments human judgment, right? And that's what we need to be after. And yes, right now or sometimes tactically, it can feel almost like a displacement of what humans can do. But I think the longer game is about augmentation. And we'll go through maybe a little bit of a painful path to get there. But I think that's something we all need to ground ourselves in, which means at least one framework to think about is that what is the work that I do today, which AI can do right away, but I'm not using it, and I should start using it. The second pillar, which is that tomorrow AI will likely be able to do this, but today I do it. And then maybe there's a third thing to say, when AI is at that mature stage, what will humans be doing? And this is a journey that we will all have to take, no matter which industry, what background, or because it will disrupt every single, industry. On the student-specific question, hence, at least a simplistic answer that I'll give is the aptitude to learn and learn fast and never have that comfort to say, okay, now I think I've done my engineering, I know, what I need to do. I think that will become just non-negotiable. The rest we will all find out and learn and mature together.
I really, really like what you just said, Aparna. And I think another researcher I really like is Eric Brynjolfsson from Stanford High, who writes beautifully about this topic. And he says, an example that is stuck in my mind, he said, is if you could automate all the work that ancient Greeks were doing, we would have gotten to vaccines faster, right? Which is to say there's no limit of human ingenuity. So if AI does start automating a lot of the work we're doing, we will find new incredible things, right? Like vaccines, right? That seems so obvious to us in hindsight, but haven't been created now, right? And he and Professor Dario have written so much about what will happen with this displacement. So I recommend reading some of those papers. And they also talk about skills that people should be learning at this time.
Thank you so much to the panel for the excellent remarks and very insightful session. We just have a small memento for the group. So.
Okay. While they're getting the memento out, I mean, one of our founding partners make this nice metaphor. This was Makin, and he said a good parallel, if this happens, was like when fire got invented. and it's being talked about a lot, is fire is very pervasive in all our life. It's very useful. It augments all of us. But we've also, it can be very dangerous, but we've learned how to manage the dangers, right? I mean, that was just a story to, I found it interesting. I had not heard it, but maybe some of you have heard it already. But I think that at its best could be a very powerful outcome. But on that, Sid, thank you.